I never meant to fall for her, not like this. Not so fast, not so hard. It started like most forbidden things do, quietly, unnoticed, till it wasn't, until it was loud inside me, demanding. It's like the echo of something I hadn't had in years, but somehow recognized. Her name was Claire, and she was my boss. She walked into the office on my first day like she owned the world. Not in a loud, attention-seeking way, but in that quiet, devastating confidence that made people clear her path. Everything about her was sharp: her words, her eyes, her movements. She spoke with precision, moved like she was always slightly ahead of everyone else. I was 29, fresh from a job that had nearly gutted me. I wasn't looking to impress anyone. I was trying to keep my head down, rebuild. But Claire, she made that impossible. She had this way of looking at you that made you feel like she saw everything: your thoughts, your insecurities. The exact moment your eyes dipped a little too low when she leaned over your desk. I told myself it was just work, that what I felt when she brushed past me, or the way her perfume lingered on my clothes longer than it should have, wasn't real. But it was. It crept in during long meetings when her leg would rest just close enough to mine under the table, that it made me question if it was accidental. It burned quietly when we'd stay late and our words would soften, not flirtatious, but close. Too close. I learned she liked her coffee with almond milk and 1 sugar. I learned she hated silence and filled it with music in her office when she worked late. I learned she was a morning person, that she barely ate lunch, and that no one really knew her. Not outside of the crisp blazers and biting wit. She kept walls up, but I started to see cracks. There was a sadness in her sometimes when she thought no one was watching. It made me ache for her in ways that felt too intimate, too fast. She never talked about a partner, and I never asked. But when her fingers grazed mine one evening as I handed her a report, and she didn't pull away immediately, I felt something shift, a current. It was tiny, maybe even meaningless, but to me, it was the first moment I let myself hope. Not because I thought she wanted me, but because I wanted her. And I couldn't keep pretending otherwise. It all came to a head during the Toronto trip. It was supposed to be a standard industry conference, the kind I usually avoided. But 2 days before the flight, she called me into her office and said, "You're coming with me. I need someone I can trust." Trust. The word hung in the air like a challenge. I packed quickly, didn't ask questions. The first night there, after a painfully long day of panels and shaking hands with people I'd never care about again, she asked if I wanted a drink. Not in that casual work colleagues way. She looked at me and said, "Join me for a nightcap." Her voice was low, tired, maybe even a little playful. I knew what I was stepping into. I knew the line I was towing. But I followed her. Anyway, the hotel bar was quiet, dimly lit, jazz humming in the background. She ordered a whiskey neat. I got a beer I didn't want, just to keep my hands busy. We didn't talk about work. We talked about books, about childhood, about how exhausting it is to pretend to have it all together. And then something changed. She really laughed at something I said, and it wasn't polite or restrained. It was raw, unguarded. God, like she'd forgotten she was supposed to keep that part of herself hidden. Her hand brushed mine as she reached for her glass. She didn't move it. Neither did I. "You surprised me," she said softly, her eyes locked. On mine, I swallowed hard. Why? She didn't answer. Stilted her head and smiled, small, secretive. "Come on, walk me back." I followed her up to her room like a man walking into fire, knowing he'd burn, but needing the heat anyway. My heart was racing. Every second felt like it could explode into something or dissolve into nothing. When we reached her door, she fumbled with the key card, then paused. She turned toward me, lips parted slightly, the hallway light catching. The soft line of her jaw. "You don't have to go," she said. Wasn't a question. It wasn't a command. And suddenly, there we were, standing on the edge of something I couldn't name. My pulse thudding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. I stepped inside. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I considered the consequences, but in that moment, all I saw was her. Not the job, not the rules, just the woman I'd been aching to touch, to know, to lead. And the door closed behind us. Asterisk, the second the hotel room door clicked shut behind us, it was like all the air had been sucked out of the world. Claire leaned back against it, arms at her sides, eyes fixed on mine. She looked different up close, still beautiful, still composed, but softer now. There was something trembling beneath her surface, and I realized she was just as uncertain as I was. We stood there in silence, inches apart, the gravity between us growing heavier by the second. I didn't move right away. I was terrified that if I touched her too soon, it would break the spell, that I'd read it all wrong, that she'd laugh or pull back or tell me I'd crossed a line. But she didn't. Instead, she reached up slowly and undid the top button of her blouse. Just one, a silent invitation. That was all I needed. I stepped closer and cupped her face in both hands, my thumbs grazing the edge of her jaw. Her eyes fluttered shut, and when I kissed her, it was gentle, at first careful, searching. But she kissed me back with this hunger that threw all caution out the window. Her fingers tangled in my shirt, pulling me in until we collided, chest to chest, heat building between us so fast it felt like we'd been holding back a flood. Everything was frantic and breathless, her blazer hitting the floor, my hands sliding over her waist, her lips on my neck, my jaw, my mouth. It was messy, urgent, too fast and too slow at once. She was so responsive. Every gasp and moan and whispered breath fueling something in me that I hadn't felt in years, like I was wanted. Really wanted, not just needed or tolerated or convenient. I backed her toward the bed, pausing only to look into her eyes and ask, "Are you sure?" She didn't speak. She just nodded and pulled me down with her. That night, she let me take the lead, and not just physically. Claire, this woman who ran boardrooms and made grown men shrink in meetings, let herself be seen. She let the walls down. She let me see the way her breath hitched when I traced a line down her stomach, the way her back arched under my touch, the way she whispered my name like it meant something more than just who brought her coffee each morning. We moved together like we'd done this 1,000 times in a dream. There was no power struggle, no games. Just two people finally giving in to something they'd both been afraid to name. Afterward, we lay tangled in the sheets, our skin sticky, with sweat, her head resting against my chest. Her fingers traced lazy circles on my shoulder, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt calm, like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. But eventually, she looked up at me with those stormy eyes and whispered, "I haven't felt that alive in years." I didn't know what to say, so I just kissed her forehead and held her tighter, hoping she could feel what I couldn't say out loud. Me too. We fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the city lights casting a soft blue glow across the room, and for a little while, the world felt suspended. No titles, no rules, just warmth and skin and breath. I remember thinking, maybe this doesn't have to be a one-time thing. Maybe we can figure it out. But even then, as I drifted into sleep, a voice in the back of my mind was already whispering doubts. She was still my boss. There would still be Monday mornings, board meetings, HR policies, whispers. And worse, what if this changed how she saw me? What if it already had? Still, I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe that something this electric, this intimate, couldn't just vanish in the light of day. That she wouldn't pretend it didn't happen or that it didn't mean anything. But part of me knew better. People like Claire didn't get to have messy emotions. They lived in control, and what we'd done, it was pure chaos. Beautiful, reckless chaos. And now we had to face it. I woke the next morning to the sound of the shower running. The bed beside me was cold. I sat up, still half drunk on sleep, and adrenaline, my body sore in the best possible way. Her clothes were gone from the floor, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. When she stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, hair slicked back, her expression had shifted. She wasn't cold, but the softness from the night before had vanished. Her eyes were calculating again. Her spine was straight. The air between us thickened. She handed me a cup of coffee black, just how I liked it tanned, sat down on the edge of the bed, still in her towel. "We need to talk," she said. The words I'd been dreading. My chest tightened. "Okay." She looked down, then back at me. "Last night was incredible." Her voice cracked a little, but she recovered quickly. "But it can't happen again." The words hit harder than I expected. I tried to keep my face neutral, but I knew she could see the hurt in my eyes. "Why not?" She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. "Because I'm your boss. Because I've spent 10 years building a reputation I can't afford to lose because people talk. And because I don't know how to be with someone like this without ruining everything." I sat in silence, unsure if she was asking for understanding or forgiveness or neither. "I'm not asking you to pretend it didn't happen," she said softly. "But I need you to understand why it can't happen again." I nodded slowly, even though every part of me screamed to fight it. "But what do you do when the best night of your life becomes the biggest secret you're not allowed to keep? You carry it like a scar. It's hidden but always burning. I wish I could say I handled it with grace." That I nodded like a professional, accepted her decision, and moved on with my life. But the truth is, after that night in Toronto, everything we said without saying it, everything we gave each other, I walked around with a hollow space in my chest. Something had cracked open inside me, and now it wouldn't close. Claire didn't mention what happened again. Not once. On the flight home, she kept things cool and casual, asking about scheduling and emails like we hadn't been tangled together in a hotel bed just hours earlier. I played along, but I felt like I was bleeding internally sitting beside her, pretending to be unfazed while every nerve in my body remembered the way she whispered my name, the way she let go, the way I saw her not the boss, not the woman on the pedestal, but the real her. And then, just like that, she locked the door again. Over the next couple of weeks, things shifted fast, subtle at first. She stopped giving me tasks directly, started communicating through email instead of speaking in person. Then she CC'd HR on a request that had nothing to do with them. I felt like I was being slowly erased from her orbit, piece by piece. The warmth that had started to develop between us, the friendship, the flirtation, the human connection was gone. She was cold, professional, and I was back to being just a name in her inbox. I kept waiting for some kind of sign, something to reassure me that what we shared meant more than a moment of weakness. But the sign never came. It's only silence. Then one morning, an email landed in my inbox. Subject line, transition, notice, role, update. Cole, informing me that my position was being restructured, effective immediately. Notice. No conversation, just ... gone. After nearly a year of giving everything to that job, of staying late, handling her stress, reading her moods better than anyone else, she tossed me out like I was disposable. I stared at the screen, stunned. My chest tightened, and not just from anger, though that was there. Burning hot and violent, but from confusion. What had I done? Was this punishment for that night? Or was it guilt? Shame? I thought we had something real, something messy and fragile and worth fighting for. But apparently to her, it had just been a mistake she couldn't erase fast enough. I didn't go quietly. I sent her one message, just one line. Why? No emotion. Okay? No desperation. Just that. She didn't respond. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. I packed up my things that Friday, walked past her office without looking in, and left the building like a ghost. No one knew what happened. No one asked. That's how offices are sterile and silent when it matters most. You disappear, and the world keeps turning. I spent the next few weeks trying to put myself back together. I got a new job out west in Seattle, far from the city where she lived, where every street reminded me of her perfume, her laugh, her shadow beside mine in elevator mirrors. But forgetting her was like trying to scrub ink from skin. I'd be fine for hours, days even, and then I'd hear a song, or catch a flash of a woman in a blazer with that same confidence. And suddenly, I'd be right back in that hotel room kissing her like she was oxygen. And no matter how many times I told myself she didn't care, that I was just a mistake she cleaned up, the truth wouldn't let me go. The truth was, I still loved her. And I hated myself for it. Then came the twist I never saw coming. I was scrolling through social media late one night, half drunk on nostalgia. Maybe hoping to see some glimpse of her, some proof she was still real when I saw the photo. A friend from the company had posted a snapshot from a corporate gala. Claire was in the center of the frame, smiling in that poised, perfect way she always did. But what stopped me cold was the man standing next to her. Mark, new guy, the one who replaced me. He had his hand resting casually on her waist, too familiar for anything professional. She wasn't pulling away. If anything, she leaned into it. My stomach dropped, so that was it. She didn't just move on from me, she replaced me with someone safer, someone cleaner. Someone who didn't remind her of that night where she let herself unravel. Someone who could play the role without all the mess. I felt sick. I hadn't even known he was being groomed for my job. She'd done it all behind the scenes while smiling at me across conference tables. It was betrayal, maybe not in the technical sense, but emotionally it gutted me. And still, even then, I wasn't angry the way I should have been. I was just hurt. Deep down, I had held on to this thread of belief that what happened between us had meant something. That she felt it too. That the way she held me afterward wasn't just comfort, it was connection. But the photo told me otherwise. She looked happy, in control. Exactly the way she used to look before I touched her, and everything got complicated. I closed the app, turned off the lights, and sat in silence. That was the moment I realized she'd chosen the safe option, the clean slate, the version of herself that didn't include me. And maybe she had every right to, but it didn't make it hurt any less. She was my boss, my fantasy, my mistake. And she broke me in a way I didn't know I could still break. I didn't think I'd ever hear from her again. After the silence, the corporate backstabbing, and the hollow way she had me erased from her world, I assumed she'd moved on completely. Maybe I even wanted her to. Maybe it was easier to live in anger than to keep reopening that wound. But 3 months later, on a Tuesday night when the rain hadn't let up in hours and I was staring blankly at my apartment ceiling in Seattle, her name lit up my phone. Claire. Just that. No message. Just a missed call. I sat up in bed like someone had just kicked me in the chest. My heart pounded. My hand hovered over the screen, but I didn't call back. I couldn't. Not after everything. Told myself it was probably a mistake, a drunk dial, or some cruel reflex. But the next night, she tried again, this time with a message. I know I don't deserve to ask you this, but can we talk, please? I should have deleted it. I should have protected myself, but some bruised part of me still wanted closure. Or answers. Or maybe just to see if she'd finally say what I needed to hear. We met in a quiet bar downtown, far from the city lights she used to rule. She looked tired, not broken, not undunged, tired in a way that didn't show on Instagram. She wore jeans and a sweater instead of her sharp corporate armor. No ring, no mark, no entourage, just Claire, raw and stripped back in a way I'd never seen before. When I walked in, she stood. Hey, she said softly, like she was afraid her voice would scare me off. Hi. Lie, I replied and sat across from her. The silence between us was heavy. Not awkward, just full with everything we didn't say, everything we'd buried. She stared into her drink, swirling it slowly. I didn't know how to reach you, she said finally. After what I did, I laughed, quiet, bitter. You mean firing me? Pretending we never happened? Letting me believe I was the problem? She winced and for once didn't defend herself. I panicked, she said. That night in Toronto was real. Too real, and it scared the hell out of me. I've spent my whole career building walls, and then you came along and I wasn't ready to let someone in like that. I leaned back, heart pounding. So you punished me for it. I know, she whispered. I know what I did. I thought cutting you out would make it easier, cleaner, but it didn't. I've been miserable. I thought I could move on, replace you, pretend. But no one sees me the way you did. No one ever has. I wanted to scream, wanted to tell her it was too late, that you don't get to shatter someone and then ask for their pieces back. But she looked so lost, not manipulative, not cold, just human. And I realized in that moment that as much as I hated what she did, I still loved her. I looked down. At my hands, you hurt me, Claire. You broke something I didn't know was breakable. She nodded. I know. I'll never forgive myself for that. But I need you to know it wasn't about you. It was about me. My fear. My pride. My need to be in control of everything, even my own heart. And now? I asked, my voice rough. Now. She hesitated. Now I'm asking if there's anything left between us worth saving. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. I thought about all the nights I laid awake, wondering if she thought about me. All the ways I imagined this conversation angrier, colder, full of things I'd rehearsed in the dark. But now that she was in front of me, vulnerable and raw, all those scripts fell apart. I don't trust you, I said honestly. Not yet. She nodded. Fair. But I still feel something when I look at you, and I don't know what to do with that. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Let me earn it. Let me try. Not as your boss. Not in secret. Just as me. We talked for hours that night. No promises, no big declarations, just truth. She told me she left the company, that she realized the life she'd built wasn't making her happy, that she wanted more not just from her career, but from herself. From love. I told her about Seattle, about my fears, about how I'd been too afraid to fall in love again. Until we didn't solve everything that night. But we cracked something open, over the next few weeks. We took it slow, really slow. Phone calls, visits. Honesty, I made her show me she meant it. That this wasn't another power game or fleeting impulse. She did. She showed up. She listened. She cried when she needed to. Stopped trying to be perfect, and slowly I let myself believe her again. Months later, we stood on the edge of the Pacific, barefoot in the sand, wind in our faces. And she took my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. I'm not your boss anymore, she whispered with a smile. No, I said, pulling her close. But that night, you still let me lead. And this time we walked forward together, equals. No secrets, no shame. Just love. Real, messy, beautiful love.